telling you to write a book.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Because he's like an interpreter.
Yeah.
It brings a lot of stuff to the ground level for people to digest.
Yeah, and I do a lot of the filmmaking story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, also the place of it was pretty.
Yeah.
Are you? Also, I'm Cuban. My time was through James.
Okay.
We watched The Shining at your house.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking about that.
Yeah. It's very good.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. I'm gonna see if there's anything we can do about the
Yes, I've been doing, I did this last film project I did with Daryl.
Yeah.
We took the film over to Paris for the climate conference. Yeah, so that was a good trip. Just got kind of really simple. Yeah, and it's just been kind of hanging on for the last couple of months.
That's a good trip.
Yeah, now I can. How are you? Good, how are you? I'm alright. Good. Good to see you.
Hey Freddie, we're going to see some video or photos of Paris. I mean, I saw your mugshot. I was really happy to see
that. Unitarian Church is doing a gathering next week. Yeah, I think on Thursday. I'm going to show some pictures and videos.
We wanted to announce that in the room across, we have childcare available if anyone has little ones. And we have Freddie here to give us a welcome.
Well, good evening. Very nice to be with each and every one of you. Just would like to raise my hands to our friends at ReSources and welcoming our relatives from the north. Glad they were able to spend some time with the chief and Jewel James. As many of you know, we was in Paris for the UN Climate Conference. I probably don't remember half of your guys' names, but I remember faces, and of course, you know, we're all here for a unified effort to, again, continue this important message of bringing our communities together, recognizing our struggles way up north. I was sharing this with one of the elders the other day, and the elder told me, he says, you're just continuing the work that my father, who was on the council of the late Vernon Lane, she says, you're just finishing you're just keeping that work going. And so it's always going to be it's always going to be, I guess, a fight. but at the same time, you know, it's educating, and I'm here to again get more educated. I think it's real nice to have this opportunity to sit with one another and visit and continue our very important work to protect the earth, to protect that sacred mountain up there. We brought a message to Paris in that the earth is alive. If our mountain, you know, didn't have snow on it, you know, this area would, you know, like many of the other areas, die, you know, and so, you know, these are the things that we protect, you know, and for those of you who have children and grandchildren, and some of you may even have great-grandchildren, this is what we're fighting to protect. And so I think that that's always real important to remind people that it's not just, we're not just fighting to protect the salmon, to protect clean drinking water, to protect the clean air, but you know, it's for our children's children who will inevitably get this great baton that we're all here fighting for. So with that, again, raise my hands to each and every one of you. Thank you for being here, and again, I want a round of applause for our hosts here.
Right. So we would also like to acknowledge that this gathering is happening on occupied Lummi-Waktamish territory. And now we have a video from the camp to give a quick introduction to what they're doing.
I'm not protesting, I'm not demonstrating, I am occupying our homelands. These are ours, we decide what happens here. And we've already said no to the projects, and I know I'm talking to cameras because you're both wearing cameras. We've already proved it in court that this is ours.
We allow us to access the territory here today.
We've already written your letter saying that you guys don't have our consent. Meaningful consultation and consent is when you've sat down and got our permission, and you've never done that. Everybody's pushing for money, but you're not going to be able to eat that money. You have all that money in your bank account, and you guys are destroying the planet, so agriculturists can't even grow the food that you buy in the grocery shelves. Are you guys prepared to watch your children suffer? You'll be long gone, and your children and your grandchildren are going to be the ones suffering. They'll have no clean water to drink. They'll have no food to eat because agriculturists will have no more water to grow because fracking takes too much water to produce.
We're inviting you to work with us on this project, to develop it in a way that protects the environment, that protects and promotes the Wet'suwet'en culture, and that provides benefits to the Wet'suwet'en people as meaningful participants in the project. To be able to do that, we need access onto the territory. We allow us access onto the territory here.
Well, you have to go through the proper process. You guys haven't done that. These pipeline projects will wipe out vast tracts of land that will prevent us from doing our berry picking, our medicines. That's what you'll be wiping out. And like I said, the fur-bearing animals, which we trap and depend on for income, and our salmon is our staple food. You'll be wiping out all our food sources.
So what you're telling us is that you will not allow us access onto the territory. We understand that. We thank you for your time here today.
We are sorry that this is the province, isn't it?
We brought you an offering. We left some water, some tobacco.
Pollution, the plastic that adds to the landfill.
Indian government?
So I'd like to call up our community members who just came back from visiting the camp.
There's also some seats up here in the front row.
Yeah,
If
people
anybody
can-
wants to
Two.
sit down.
There's two more, one more.
Back there. Jared.
Somebody else that
Jared.
So we were up at the camp over winter break, and some of us are still coming. And sure, yeah. So we were up at the camp over winter break, and we were given consent to stay, and welcome Rita and Togastai. And they showed us what they've been doing with trapping. We were able to help with cooking and cleaning. Shoveling a lot of snow, cleaning off solar panels. And we have an event scheduled. There are flyers outside of the door, February 11th? An event for February 11th where we're going to be talking more about a report back
Okay, thank you.
to hopefully make it more accessible for other community members to go up as well. And we are here to welcome our speakers.
Can't hear.
We're here to welcome our speakers, Frida Houston and Togastai. Togastai is the hereditary chief of the Lac Summit Sioux clan, which is part of the Wet'suwet'en people. And Frida is the spokesperson for Unist'ot'en, and she has been maintaining this role since 2008 and running the camp for the past 6 years and preventing those pipelines. And so with that, I would like to welcome them to the stage to come speak. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for welcoming us onto your lands here. And thank you for the warm welcome here. I know there's been a group of people that have been trying to invite us here for a while, and can you hear me now? Well, we've been doing this for like 6 years, and we've been living on our territory because my dad always told me that the best way we could protect our lands is to actually live on the land. So that's why we made a choice to move back to our lands and to live right on the territory. That was the only way we could monitor it. We couldn't monitor it from the reservation, so we've been living out there for 5 years now, full time. And before we used to actually just run an action camp where we only went out 1 week every year to bring people from all over the planet to learn on how to protect the environment and learn from each other that how could we educate others to do the same. So we've been running those camps for 6 years. Every July, 1 week a year, we run a camp where we bring people in from all over and skill share with each other on how we might do this together to protect our planet, because everything out there impacts us all because we're all connected by water. So no matter where you live, just because you're not in the tar sands or just because you're not where they're fracking, all those waters are connected and they impact us all, because all of the waters flow into the ocean and all of the salmon go to the ocean and then they go back into the fresh water. So all of us will be impacted no matter where you live. And so my family has been very cultural and have been brought up on the land. So even though I went into the education system to get educated and worked in economic development for 14 years, I realized that I myself needed to do something in order to educate others from my nation as well as other people in the planet to make better choices to make change in our life, we have to be a part of change. We can't expect other people to make that change for us. And I decided the only way I was going to be able to do that is to go back to the land, learn everything I can from the land and how we can sustain ourselves and to educate others. And a lot of people always say we can't go backwards, but you're going to be forced to go backwards by nature itself. And we'll have no choice but to go back to growing our own foods and trying to sustain ourselves because we're not very wise in managing our resources because industry and government is at that state where they're just taking, and through our cultures, when we take something, we give something back. And through the economic wheel that's ruling this planet now, they're just taking, and they're over-exploiting all the resources out there that it's damaging to the earth. And when you damage the earth, you're damaging yourself. So that is part of what we're trying to do, is teach people that you have to be a part of the change. You have to take a step back and decide that, what am I willing to give up to make that change? What am I willing to share with others so that they may be educated? Because right now a lot of people are so stuck in a place where you're trying to determine for yourself how to get a roof over your head, how to get food on your table, how to feed your family. So everybody is caught up in this economic wheel where we feel we have to go work a job 9 to 5, we have to go to school to get education so we can get that job, to put a roof over our head and to feed our families, that we're all stuck in that wheel that keeps turning. And the only way that we can change that is what we call is decolonize your mind. Because right now all of us are caught up in this colonial state where we feel like we have to be a part of that wheel, and so we've been running that as part of our action camp every summer when we have it. One of the workshops is called decolonization, where you learn to decolonize your mind and learn how another method of only taking what you need and always giving back, and to teach your children that it's not all about take, and in order to sustain ourselves, we need water. Everybody needs water to survive. And all these resource extractive industries are destroying all the water, natural water sources, the fresh water. So if we destroy all those fresh water, right now they say there's about 2% of the whole planet left of fresh water. And if we continue to destroy that, right now the government in Canada is trying to pass the Water Act by this year, they said 2016, where they're going to charge the agriculturists, the municipalities, for every 1,000 cubic volume of water, they want to charge them, whether it be $500, $200. And they're going to exempt oil and gas from that Water Act. And they're going to exempt the Indigenous people, are the only 3 exemptions that they said they will have, but they will charge everybody else for how much water you take. And the purpose of that, I believe, is they're trying to control the water because they know that resource is getting extinct. So they want to control that resources and they want to make money off it. They want to commodify water now, and they're hoping to pass that Water Act this year up in Canada. And I'm pretty sure, because there is no money in oil and gas, that those pipes they want to put through our land, my belief is they want to put water through those pipes. Because China's already run out of water, and they're piping water from south to north now because they've polluted all their waters through industry. So they're having to pipe like these big 4-inch pipes, where they're 4-foot pipes. They're piping water up to the north, and my belief is they want Canada's water. BC has like tons of water there, and they want access to that water. So the government wants to control that water now, and they're hoping to try and pass that act. And so that's another big thing that we're going to be up against, that we're not going to let them try and control our water. That's our lifeblood. That's where we get our water to drink. That's where we get our salmon, and our bears depend on that salmon and the fresh water source. So they've ruined every other resource that ever came across the planet by over-exploiting it, and now they're starting to ruin the water resource, and they're going to try and own that too. So we have even bigger fights on our hands. So we've been doing our best to educate people, let people know what's going on, and we've been educating ourselves so that we know what's going on, and we use facts rather than argue and fight with people. I state facts, the things I learn, I share with others so that they may learn and do what you can to make change, because I always tell people it's not going to be me suffering, it's going to be my children and my grandchildren who are going to suffer without the water, without the fish, and everything as we know today, that is, all the comforts we live in aren't going to be there no more if we continue to allow industry and government to destroy our planet and destroy our water sources. That it's our children and grandchildren who will pay the price. Now, we may not see it right now, but they will be the ones that will. You'll see water wars where they will be fighting each other over fresh water to try and get at least a cup of water for themselves. And you see a lot of these movies they're putting out, that Hollywood put out, they have some truth to it, that it will come to that. You'll see vehicles parked because we'll run out of gas. The vehicle will be useless, it'll be parked on the side of the road, and everybody will be walking and then trying to find food, trying to find water. So, and that's the state our planet is in, and we'll be forced to go backwards. Even though people say we can't go backwards, we'll be forced to go backwards. We'll be forced to grow our own food and forced to try and sustain ourselves. And this year will be the second year we're running what we call the spring camp, where we do work projects, and we started a project called the Healing Center, where decided that in order for us to help our people, we needed to heal our people, because for my family, a lot of us have gone through healing, and we were brought up culturally, so we're connected to our culture and received healing for all the traumas we've been through from the various abuses that we grew up in. We went through healing so that we could heal ourselves. That's why we're so connected to our culture and so connected to our lands. And we believed if we provided a healing space for our people to come to, so that they in turn could receive healing, because we have all the impacts at the residential schools that really impacted our families, where children are disconnected from their culture and we're disconnected from our lands. And we believe our healing center will be that space to reconnect our people back to the lands and bring holistic healing, whether it be mental, spiritual. If we have holistic healing, and then they'll be connected to the land, then they're going to want to protect that land. So that's why we had the idea. We thought that was a long-term vision, because my niece is going to be graduating with her PhD in clinical psychology, and she was the one that said she wanted to build a healing lodge on our territory, and she wanted to start it with the youth, because our youth, you always say our youth is going to be our future, and if we heal our youth and they're connected to the land, then they're going to live their life accordingly and protect those lands, and not make the choices that are going to destroy the planet and the land. So we thought that was going to be far off, and we shared that with some of the supporters down from Galliano Island and all those different areas, and they said, hey, we can fundraise. So they started a fundraising campaign, and they raised $40,000 for the first phase, and this past spring they built the kitchen and the dining hall part of that phase one, and we finished that in May, and then just over the last 6 months we've added many different parts. Like we finished off the commercial kitchen and the dining hall, so now that people can eat indoors. Before we were eating outdoors and cooking in an outdoor tent for the 200 people that would come for Action Camp, but now we have a indoor kitchen that can cook for the 200 people that came to visit. So, and we're starting they've already started the fundraising for phase 2, which will start again in May, June. We're going to start the second phase, and that's going to be a lobby and some counseling offices and another workshop room. I forgot to mention that first phase has a workshop room upstairs so that people can conduct healing workshops upstairs. So, and then the third phase, which will be next year, we'll add on like sleeping quarters, so we can bring whole families out and do family healing, and they'll have quarters that they can have private accommodations where they can sleep in, and while they're there for their healing program that will be offered. And my niece said that she will work along with many of the mental health units within the areas to try and develop a program that's suitable to our people, and we're hoping to open it up to others as well, because even today we have supporters that come in saying that they're receiving healing, and we had one of the supporters develop a zine because she was taking testimonies from our visitors. We had one person come in and say they lost 20 pounds the 3 weeks they were there, and they have maintained, and they said they've never been that small since high school. And it was because we were physically working all day at the camp, and the diet is a healthy diet, so he was eating healthy and physically working. He managed to shed 20 pounds, and when he went back, he said he cleaned out all these cupboards and started to eat the type of menu that he was eating at the camp, and said he has maintained. And so he put an article in that zine that supporter wrote that we had people who were having mental problems and said they were suicidal when they came to the camp, and just being in an accepting environment and in a loving environment, and have routine where they're physically active and they're eating healthy. They said that they stopped taking their medication when that was controlling their suicidal feelings, and they said that they didn't even tell anybody that they stopped taking their meds, but they said all those symptoms were gone, and they said that they never felt better, and they went home and they still weren't taking their meds. They just continued on with eating healthy and being around healthy people. And so people are experiencing healing even though we haven't started the healing center. So can you imagine, we run a program, what kind of program we can successfully run out of just people being connected to the land and drinking clean water right out of the river, and all the environment around you is healthy and it's alive, so you're just drawing from nature itself is giving you strength.
My name is Man Who Sleeps Beside the Water. I'm one of the hereditary chiefs of the Unist'ot'en clan, or the Fireweed clan of our nation. And my people are people of the sky. Our ancestry goes back to a time when a young woman was the lone survivor of her community from a huge war that came in and wiped out most of her community members, and she was the only person who managed to survive, and she lived in the mountains by herself for a couple of years until she became so lonely that she was about to do herself in and kill herself. And it was a really rainy and stormy day, and the Creator opened up the clouds and came through the clouds and spoke to her and told her not to do it, begged her not to do it, and told her and promised her that she would have company soon, that she wouldn't be feeling alone anymore. And she became pregnant. And the Creator told her when she had those children always have to remember where they come from. And that's my ancestry. That's the people I come from. And we've been working with the Unist'ot'en since day one. The Unist'ot'en decided to begin asserting themselves on their traditional territories, and that's something that our chiefs wanted to do for a long time. And I remember when the first time a drilling crew was reported to be out in the Unist'ot'en territory, it was a fascinating story too. The drilling crew themselves, the workers, phoned up my hereditary chief and told him that their boss, the main guy working for the Apache Corporation, who was actually trying to put in the Pacific Trails Pipeline project, had phoned them up and said that they have to get out there fast and get out there soon because the Unist'ot'en are busy. And the Unist'ot'en, Frida's brother, was being buried at that time. And he was a good friend of mine too. But the drillers were so disgusted by the behavior of the proponent, the Apache Corporation and their employees, and how they're talking about Aboriginal people. They're extremely racist. So the workers from the drilling company phoned up my chief and said, well, if you want to stop us, we're going to be heading out 5 o'clock in the morning. If you want to stop us at the bridge, we're letting you know we're going to be crossing the bridge about 5 o'clock in the morning, and that jerk should be coming across with us. So that night, we're at the wake for Frida's brother, and I sat down with my head chief and Frida's head chief, and I just said, if you guys want me to go out there, I can go out there tonight and meet them at 5 o'clock in the morning. I just need to make sure I have somebody with me. So we did that. My head chief and Frida's head chief both made a pact that evening saying that they were going to work together to stop these pipelines from going through. And I was sent out there along with our uncle Henry Rosso and Frida's cousin Hank Jr. He came out with us as well, and it was just next morning 5 o'clock, sure enough, that drilling crew showed up with that guy. And we stood there on the bridge waiting for him to show up, and the loggers were calling in the kilometers all the way in. Like the logging company, the people who were driving the logging trucks were actually phoning or talking on the radio saying that pipeline crew is now at 37 kilometers. And then a little while later they called back again. 54 kilometer, we're reporting the pipeline crew just passed us, they're heading in, and they kept telling us where they were. And the pipeline crew sure enough showed up, and we confronted them on the bridge and asked them what they were doing there, and they said that they were attempting to come in and do some drilling for the Pacific Trails Pipeline Project, and we said, you guys don't have anybody's permission to do that, we're going to have to tell you you have to leave. And they said, well, we have a lot of stuff back there. And we said, it's not our problem, it's yours. You guys should have talked to the client before you brought them in. And we're going to tell you guys you're not coming in, and you have 5 days to get that stuff out of here. And the guy didn't know what to say. I quoted a bunch of court cases that help us assert ourselves on our lands. And they didn't know what to say. They had no defense at all. They just said, okay, well, we'll come back tomorrow and talk with you then. We turned them around and drove away. And the drilling crew, the guys that were supposed to be working back there, their vehicle was behind, and they turned around. And it was amazing because they opened up the windows and they were yelling around, and, woo! Yeah! Taking pictures of us. And it was crazy because these guys just lost their job. They were happy about it. It just goes to show that there's people out there that have a conscience, even if they're working in the industry. They understand what's at stake, what could be lost, and they're willing to do what they think needs to be done. You know, not everybody's a villain out there. Even the people that work within industry. There's a lot of people out there who do have a conscience, and unfortunately they feel like that's the only decision they can make at that time. But there's sacrifices that they're willing to take as well. And that comes from all walks of life, people who come from all walks of life. So it was amazing to kind of experience that. We've been working with them for 5 years. I was raised as a traditionalist as well. My grandparents brought me out hunting, fishing, trapping all throughout all of the seasons. And I got a chance to learn how it is to be Unist'ot'en on Unist'ot'en territory. So I grew up doing that, and that's what I'm doing today. We live out there for 5 years. We've been living out there for 5 years now, and we're trapping right now. It's amazing. We're getting a lot of animals, and we're not just like going out with this whole purpose of like targeting as many animals as we can. We're managing the territory. We check how many tracks are on the trap line. We determine which areas we want to leave alone. So we'll actually pull traps out of areas that we don't want to trap anymore. If we feel like we've already impacted the population enough, we'll pick up the trap and move it to another part of the territory. So that's an activity that we're doing. We're actually managing the territory. We can see how many moose are out there. We can see how many wolves. We can see the types of wolverines, how many are out there, how many martins, pine martins are there, all these other different types of animals. We're able to track them in the winter and see where they're traveling to and how much time they're spending in one area and whether or not they're getting enough food. And that's how we're managing them. It's an amazing experience. We do that for the winter. The summer is quite similar. We spend a lot of time in the mountains and in the streams, hiking around in the back of the territory, learning about the animals that are there, because there's a lot of animals that hibernate throughout the winter. So we get a chance to track them during the summer months. And we were able to see exactly how many grizzly bears and black bears are back there and what they're doing. Like I know last year we saw a mother with 2 tiny little babies running down the road in front of us, so we stopped and watched them. She ran off to the side and she had the little babies with her. This year we went back to the same area and we saw the 2 babies, but they're like this big. They're like huge cubs, grizzly bear cubs. And they were walking down the road by themselves. The mother, it was during mating season, the mother had pushed them away and mated with another grizzly bear, so they're on their own. So these 2 cubs were traveling around the territory by themselves. We had a satellite camp in the back of the territory to help protect it from helicopter traffic. So we had people staying in the back of the territory, and there's 2 grizzly bear cubs. I guess we're feeling lonely, so they spent a lot of time hanging around the satellite camp. So, it wasn't scary or anything. The people staying there thought it was like just amazing to be that close to such beautiful animals. And that's the thing. We're developing a relationship, we're nurturing a relationship between us and the other beings that exist on the territory that we're occupying today. And that's something that was missing for a long time. When our people were first forced onto Indian reservations, that relationship that we had with our land, with the other fellow creatures that live out there and share the spaces with us, was severed. So we had no idea what was going on out there. They had no idea who we were anymore. So we've been out there for 5 years, and some of these creatures are recognizing us. and we're recognizing them. We know what's happening with them. We're starting to understand that territory a lot better. The management regime that we've reimposed on that territory is something that no government agency can ever mimic. We're capable of understanding that territory better than anybody right now. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Indigenous people all over had that ability. Many still do. There's quite a few Aboriginal people across North America and all over the world that still live on their territories, that still occupy their territories, and they know what's happening on their territories. And unfortunately, there's a lot of industry out there too that are invading those territories and attempting to come in and do what they want. And we're one of those communities that are stopping them from coming through. We have to. We don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. Together we can stop these guys from coming in and doing what they want on these places. For crying out loud, the fracking fields in northeastern BC is saturating the aquifers. Aquifers are where people get water from. That's a filtration, a natural filtration system on this planet. Those aquifers are getting completely contaminated with fracking fluids, toxic fracking fluids. Embalming fluid, a crap load of all these horrible chemicals are going into the earth. And it's saturating these aquifers. Those aquifers are slowly being drained into the Arctic Ocean. The tar sands is in the same soup. It's right beside it. Like BC is here, the fracking fields, the tar sands are right here. It's like right next door. Aquifers from both of these giga projects that the Harper government kind of promoted and got going along with the provincial governments, they're both saturating the Arctic Ocean right now. Even if we stop today, they're going to keep saturating it for decades and decades and decades. It's not going to go away for a long, long time. But that doesn't mean that we can just give up and walk away from it. We still have a responsibility. We have a collective responsibility to get in there and start making change happen. We can start doing something that will save our future generations. It's not going to keep them 100% healthy for the next 3 or 4 generations because, like I said, those aquifers are saturated with toxins right now, and it's going to take forever for it to eventually filter through and clean itself out. But even then, we're going to suffer through the consequences of our actions, of our inactions that we kind of watched happen today. But like I said, we can still make change, and that's our responsibility. As a collective group of human beings all over this planet, we have a responsibility not only to ourselves and our unborn, but all of our relatives, the bears, the fish, the birds, the insects, the ones that people always forget. All of their unborn generations need us. Because it's our direct relatives who are out there right now that are poisoning this planet. And they're going to keep poisoning it unless it gets stopped. They're going to keep poisoning it until it's uninhabitable. And we cannot let them do that. What's up?
We are going to move on to a Q&A, but before that, Andrew has an announcement to make.
Hi there, I'm Andrew. So part of what we're doing, wanted to ask was part of our group, a lot of us who went up to the camp before and got to spend time there, is we've heard a lot from Freedom Tokustai about how to support and do ongoing work to keep what they're doing going along. And it's been really remarkable to see that the camp they're doing has been run completely by, or not, runs on the support of grassroots donations and fundraising from communities like this, and they don't rely on the government or big NGOs to fund the incredible work that they're doing. So I wanted to ask folks, a lot of you have been really amazing at giving a lot to this camp and giving time and money that you have worked hard to earn. But we want to ask again if you're able to keep send Freedom Tokustai back up with a bit of cash to keep things going. I know, I was blown away. I learned they spent $200,000 on food in 1 year. That was all raised by just communities outside of any big government or nonprofit. So we got a hat to pass around. We wanted to pass around before the end of the Q&A so they can get up to Canada at a decent hour, or back up to Vancouver at a decent hour. So if you're able to give as generously as possible, that's greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Is it possible to write checks?
Yes, it is. Can we put the name on the...
And U.S. money's worth 30% more in Canada.
40%. Yeah, it's crazy.
What's it down to?
Well, I think it's 60 years? 64 cents.
64.
64. Wow.
I don't, I'm not able to give anything today, but like if I wanted to give something later, like is there gonna be somewhere that I could do that?
Post-dated check.
No. Like how is it? Yeah, you know what I mean?
What's the best spot right now to give
When
online?
you're thinking it's going,
Yeah.
it's going to be 59.
What's
Probably.
Oh, actually,
They're
yeah.
probably
If you
looking
send a
back
check
for
to
it
this,
because
the address that Frida's writing.
Okay.
they're,
Sorry, that
Yeah, there's a
the
bucket
whole
going around.
economy is based on oil and this fracking crap, you know?
To the name that's right there above the address.
Thank you.
Smithers. You put it in the bank.
If the bank will take it.
Yeah, they take it.
So if folks have no more questions about that, we can move on to the Q&A section. Does anybody have any questions for Freedom Thursday? All right, yeah, in the black.
Yeah, how long had the nation been off of their heritage lands before you started doing the camp again? More than 5.
About 1880 was the
Oh,
last
that's
time
not too bad.
when our people were forced off of the lands, and on
Oh, okay.
1880. That was the last time our people were free to walk on our lands. When
That
we
is
started
an
getting
awful
pushed
long time.
off of our traditional territories onto reservations. And that was a hard time because during that time period, a lot of our people starved, or they were pushed off of their lands in the middle of winter. And like my great-grandfather, when he did the testimony to the Royal Commission about being forced off of his traditional territory, he talked about how it was coming back to going to the reserve lands from his traditional territory on his trip out there in the middle of winter. His newborn baby froze to death on the road. And it's not an uncommon story. It's a story that's shared by a lot of our people. It was a really hard time, and a lot of our people actually like starved to death during that time because we weren't on our traditional lands hunting and fishing and living off our lands like our ancestors taught us. Suddenly we were forced to live together in a sedentary community and forced to depend on a government that was more happy to watch us starve than to actually help us.
Oh, I was gonna ask, are there other native tribes, indigenous people in Canada that are going back on their lands, being inspired by what you're doing?
I think there's only a few others that I've heard of that have moved back. I think there's the one in that forestry one. What's Christy Jack? What's the nation?
Oh, the Lillooet.
Yeah, the voice of the voice. Lillooet. I know a lady has built a cabin and moved back to her territory there after visiting our camp, and I know a really young couple in Dixon country has moved back to their traditional territory and moved into a cabin. That's our hopes is that more and more of our people will start doing that, and we said we're building a prototype that's showing it's doable so that other people can start building cabins and moving back to the territory.
Our closest neighbor is a young couple who's got a 5-year-old son, and they live 44 kilometers from us. But they're raising their 5-year-old son. They've been out there for 3 years now, part-time, and she's expecting a newborn baby soon. So as soon as that baby comes into the picture, they plan on moving out there in a more of a full-time basis to raise both of those kids so that they're immersed in their culture and they understand their land intimately. But Lilo Island is another front line that started. They were inspired by the stuff that we did. They started in August. They're occupying an island close to Prince Rupert, BC, where the Petronas company, a Malaysian-based company, wants to build a frack gas plant so they can put them into ships and bring them across to markets in Asia. They're actively stopping these guys. Like, you can go online and find all these amazing videos of them confronting these surveyors on boats and yelling at them and chasing them up. We've gone out and visited them quite a few times. We're close to them. They have a camp started. They have a bunkhouse. They have a cookhouse now. They're actively reestablishing themselves on their territories. for the sole purpose of stopping these huge companies from having their way. But at the same time, they're seeing the benefits of it. They're thankful for being forced to make that decision, because suddenly they're getting a chance to spend a lot more time on the ocean. They're spending a lot more time on the land, and they're seeing all the wildlife that still exists there and still thrives there. Like when we were there, we were watching humpback whales feed not too far from us when we were traveling in a boat checking out the Flora Banks. It was just an amazing experience. But Maddie Lee's another group that the Gitsan neighbors, they started their own camp as well. The Rocky Mountain Fort is one that just started with Site C. There's indigenous people from the Treaty 8 Nation that are stopping the hydroelectric dam from coming in. And we know intimately the impacts of that because the majority of our southern territories were flooded out by the Alcan Smelters project, where they created this massive reservoir and killed off our entire caribou herd back in the 1950s. A caribou herd that fed our people since time immemorial, since the beginning of time. And suddenly, with this hydroelectric project, they flooded out a massive area, and this massive herd that we had that used to travel down into Sakopma country, in southern BC, and back up through our territories, was wiped out. They all got tangled in the trees that they didn't log out. And they were trying to swim across this reservoir following their migration route, and they got tangled in trees, and all the adults died. And one of the stories of one of our hunters back then said that he was hunting in the mountains and he was coming back to his home community, and he just came across all these baby caribou that were lying on the edge of this lake that wasn't there before. And their parents were all tangled up in the trees and dead. So that really traumatized him. And he's a guy that grew up out on the land. And he's passed away now, he's an elder. But he talked about that experience and how much it impacted him. And we have to take stuff like that to heart. We have to really understand the impacts of stuff like that, because if people don't start moving for change and being a part of change, then those types of stories will become commonplace, and we're going to be a pretty miserable species of beings living on this planet if we allow that to continue. Where we are.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious, because you made it sound like the reservation is separate and far away from the heritage land. Could you talk a little bit about that? And is that true? Anyway, just talk about that.
Well, as Wet'suwet'en, we have 22,000 square kilometers, and within that 22,000 square kilometers, there's 5 Wet'suwet'en reservations. And the community that I grew up in is 2 hours away from where my cabin is now.
Okay.
So it's a 2-hour commute, and we have a reservation of about 800 to 900 people. Where I moved to, it's very remote, and we made a decision we couldn't protect from the reservation because it's 2 hours away. Like he said, they had to leave at midnight and got there 2 in the morning to make sure they were there. 5 in the morning when we got the call that they had brought in drill equipment. So that's when we decided that because of their tactics they were using, they knew we were burying my brother, and they did it again when they sent in the chopper. I don't know if any of you watched the footage where the chopper was held up for 3 hours because they couldn't get a hold of me because I was busy burying my dad. So they knew we were busy with the funeral, so again they tried to come in because they thought we were busy. So that's why we said we needed to live out there, to be there whenever the choppers tried to come in or equipment tried to cross the bridge. So we're right there. And some strange reasons, I'm pretty sure they follow us. They know when we're gone. They try to come in as soon as we're gone.
You can raise your hand high if you want to ask questions.
Yeah, have you ever been threatened physically by the pipeline or any of the corporate people out there?
Well, this past summer, you saw the footage where the police came in. That was all because we wouldn't let Coastal GasLink in, so they went to the police and tried to lie to the police to say we were the aggressors, we were the ones that were threatening them, and they were afraid of us. So the police came in and started harassing us, stopping anybody that was coming to the camp, writing down their license plates, and coming to the bridge and threatening us, saying that I could be arrested because I'm blocking a public road. the industry was using police, and the police basically, we were saying, are working for industry and government, even though they deny it and say, no, we're just here to protect people. And the police tried to draft up a contract for us to sign, and a paragraph in that contract said that this contract was to keep the peace between the two parties while the one party went along and did their work. So I said, basically your contract is saying you're here to protect the industry while they come in and do their work. That's what your peace document says. So we just said, no, we're not signing that.
Yeah, so I was just at a talk that the chairman at Lummi gave at Western, and the Dean of Huxley, which is our environmental college, opened it up by saying we're on traditional Lummi lands, which to me means that these used to be Lummi lands. And then this was opened by saying that we're on occupied Lummi territory. And when we realize that we're on occupied Lummi land, how can we navigate as settlers to be the best that we can? Like, do you have any advice or kind of insights in that consciousness?
How I always answer that question, go to the Lummi people and ask them how you can best honor them and their land, and how you can work alongside them and help them do what they need to do too. Because I can't speak for another nation, so we always just say, you know where the people live, go talk to their leadership, go talk to their chiefs, and see how you might be able to help them. And we say that everywhere we go, that when people come to our camp, we tell them the same thing. You're living in somebody's territory, wherever you came from, make connections with those people. See how you might be able to help them, because for us, we truthfully can say the success of what we're doing is people like yourself. Because if it was just us and we didn't garner all the worldwide support that we do have for our camp right now, you can guarantee the military and police would have been in there. You can guarantee that I would probably be in jail right now, because we decided to use what they use. We used media, independent media. We made you see all the video footage that we put out there. There was video footage that protect us from the police, because when they sat down and met with us and said that we were the ones that were being the aggressors and threatening the industry workers, we showed them all our footage that showed industry workers were the aggressors and were the ones that were talking rudely to us. So we showed them all the footage and said, here it is. You see how peaceful we've been respectful, and they are the ones that are being the aggressors. We have it on footage. Tell them to show us their footage of where we're being aggressors. They don't have any. So we use whatever they use for our own benefit, and we always tell people, use your privilege. We use the word privilege because we know no matter where you go, that a lot of you people have privilege. More privilege than we as colored people would have. And it has been used to our benefit. It has helped us, and we've realized that. And because there was a lot of settler folk in the camp, and they knew that they couldn't just bust in, they wouldn't want to hurt their own people. So that is another thing that prevented them from coming in full force, because we had a lot of settler people up there, and we had women, we had children. So they knew, and the other thing was we remained peaceful. Regardless of how aggressive they were, I just continued to remain peaceful and talk calmly to them. So they had nothing. They couldn't just come in and say they had reason to use aggression on us because we were being peaceful. So, hope that answers your question. Just make the connection with the people whose land you're on and how you might help them.
I'd suggest even further to find ways to enable them to be the decision makers again. Because that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, these territories, you shouldn't have a token Lummi come in and be recognized as a Lummi person on what used to be Lummi land. There should be somebody who should be recognized as somebody who still lives here, still occupies here, and still is a decision maker here. And that's what we tell people when they come into our territory.
My deepest thanks for all the work you're doing. Thank you very much. A couple of questions, actually.
Louder, please.
First, there's a new federal government in Canada, and that appears to be a change happening. Also, just recently, the BC government has come out in opposition to the Enbridge pipeline. So it seems kind of encouraging signs. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Second question, UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. U.S. finally adopted this 5 years ago, but in that 5 years, virtually nothing has happened. Any suggestions for us as to what we might do to help see implementation of that UN declaration?
So for the change in government, for our people, we don't believe that's going to provide any kind of change for our people.
Really?
Because no matter which government has been in there for hundreds of years, they're all bound by the debt that the prior government creates for them. So as much as the promises they make, a lot of them can't even live up to their promises. So I don't believe, we already knew the Enbridge one was dead in the water a long time ago because all of the province of BC said no to that project. The only project that everybody didn't say no to, they were sitting on the fence, was the frack gas, what they call LNG, liquid natural gas. It's not natural because it's fracked. They sold that to the public as it's safe, it's clean. So that is the main battle we're having right now, because we didn't have to keep bringing the Enbridge battle forward for the oil because nobody wanted it. So they're just tooting their horn saying that no Enbridge is going to happen. It was already defeated. It wasn't because they said it. It was already defeated by the public. So.
It was a distraction.
And the UN, to me, we can't continue to sit back and let legislation or leadership make that change. We have to be that change. We have to decide, how can we make that change happen right in the area where we're living? It's up to people that you live here. You should be the decision makers. How can you start sitting down with the First Nations people who are of these lands? How can you develop working relationships where you can hear what it is they see is going to work for their lands and how you might be able to work together to help them? Because to me, I always say people are change. No matter which leadership you put in there, people vote them in, people can vote them out. So people are the ones that, I always say, people power. When people join forces together and decide together, we're going to make this change. Leadership's not doing it, the government's not doing it, we need to do it. That's the only way things are going to change, and educate the young people. Educate the young people to start living with this new change. People don't like change, so it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to get lots of people fighting it. Like, for example, when we first started this in our community, nobody agreed with it. Everybody was afraid to speak out because of listening to the stories that our ancestors got imprisoned when they went off the reserve and they didn't have this piece of paper giving them permission. So they got thrown in jail. So a lot of our people were silent, so they're afraid to speak out. They were taught in residential school, you don't speak up to authority. So people, especially our people, didn't like change. So they weren't in support of what we were doing, but the longer we just kept standing firm and strong and knowing, looking at the end goal. If we continue to stand, continue to educate, continue to present the facts, we'll eventually get it, because that's what marketing, use marketing tools. I always tell people, use what the rest of the world uses. They use marketing. How can you sell this idea to the rest of the people that live here, that this is the better route to go? Our people, we always gave back when we took from the land. We didn't take. And that worked for our people for thousands of years, and the other colonial state method we know doesn't work, it's destroying the planet. So listen to the First Nations people, because that's our way of life. Sit down with them and hear what worked for them, and then learn how to incorporate that into your decisions, for whether it be economic development and all these other components that people depend on. You don't need all this to be billionaires, you just need enough to sustain yourself. So meet, sit down, talk to people, and decide how you can help.
Yeah, basically the UN Declaration's it's like a roadmap that you can use. You can use it to navigate your way through life if you wanted. That was its original intent. It was originally designed so that it could be like a roadmap, not just for governments, but for people around the planet to use to learn how to navigate their way through Indigenous people's lands in a respectful way. And I think, like what Frida said, go to the people and sit down and find a way to empower them, find a way to enable them to become the decision makers, because that's who they really are. Yeah.
Do you see the camp part of a more global movement? Like, for instance, Mauna Kea in Hawaii, they defeated the telescope, and Keystone XL with the Lakota, and many other indigenous communities are rising up. Do you see that part of that movement?
We've been a part of that movement for a while. We've been in contact with a lot of those people since they first started their struggles, and I think we all managed to inspire each other in one way or another. But I think the camp kind of was the pivotal point to present to the world that you can actually use grassroots power to make change. And you can use tenacity and persistence to make sure that that change is going to stay. And that's something that we've been active in, making sure that we didn't just walk away from the fight one day when we felt like we've had enough of it. You know, it's a way of life now. We live out on the territories full time. We love it. We're developing, like I said earlier, a relationship with all the beings, the fellow beings on those territories, and that relationship that we're nurturing is growing, and it's making us better people. And I think that serves to inspire a lot of people. The longevity of what we're doing is huge. It's one of the big reasons why a lot of people feel like they can do similar stuff, if not same stuff as what we're doing.
So we want to let Frida and Togastai go and get some rest at some point, so we have time for a few more questions. If you had your hands up, maybe raise them high so we can finish that up.
Yeah, for your upcoming projects in the Healing Center, what kind of, any particular skills or tools, equipment you need? Off the top of your head? If not, we'll check the website.
I think basically most of the tools are usually there. If people have skills that they want to share, or if you don't have no skills, we just tell people to come, because we usually have one key person that's spearheading the whole project, and he's done building and construction as his career before, so he's willingly teaching people, and we have some other skilled people that have come with construction experience, and we have people that have none, so people are learning, and it's like a skill share. And they go into teams, and you always have one skilled person, maybe four that are learning, and that one person will keep an eye on them, making sure they're doing proper work. And we had people visit and said they couldn't believe how up to code our buildings were. And I think the guy that spoke about the first part of the project, he actually said it cost him $25 per square foot. This from the fundraising and using volunteers. About 30 volunteers worked there for the full 3 weeks. Some came for 4 days, some came for 1 week, some came for the full 3 weeks. So as people were going, some were coming. So we had an average 30 to 40 people come in and work on that building. And there's a pole that stands right in the middle of the dining hall, and people signed their name with a paint pen. Wrote their name on there that they contributed to the building. So yeah. Any skill set, whether you've got plumbing skills, electrical skills.
No skills.
No skills, no way with skills. Yeah, some people actually said it helped them to add that to their resume, that they were assistant in construction.
Is there a contact person in particular to reach out to work with?
Is it Zoe?
For the construction project?
The registration?
Yeah.
I think there's, when Ray goes down, there's two places that actually do registration for us because we have so much inquiries and we only have so much space, so people register so that we can keep an even amount, like even now for visitors, that people register and we say we got 8 to 10 people now, so maybe not this week, maybe next month would be better, so. We have Victoria Forest Action Network, and the lady's name is Zoe Blunt, and she's been doing activism work for 25 plus years, and she actually came on board probably 3 years ago and offered to do screening for us and do the registrations, and she's actually done fundraising for our camp, and she's actually doing fundraising for the second phase of the Healing Center right now, so. And I think there's another crew at Rising Tide Coast Salish, they're out of Vancouver. They came to our camp 3 years ago and really got a lot out of the camp, the action camp, and decided they wanted to start their own group because they physically, a lot of them work jobs and couldn't be up to give physical support to the camp, so they decided the way they could support, they started their own group and did fundraising and educating down in Vancouver to educate people what we were doing and why we were doing it. So there's two places, and both of them are on Facebook. If you guys are on Facebook, they have a Facebook page too that they register people through.
And do you take people from out of the country?
Yeah, we've had people from Germany, we've had people from France that have come for visits, and a lot of them just paid their own way, flew into Smithers, the nearest airport, and got people to pick them up, or otherwise they rented cars and came up to the camp. I think, how many months did that girl from Germany stay?
She was there for a month.
1 month. She came for a whole month and just
She'd
wanted
never
to,
been to Canada before.
she just wanted to learn from us, and she learned everything about our culture and how we do things, and saw our pit house. We have a pit house that we constructed too. It's a traditional building that it's not finished yet because we were supposed to live in it probably 2 years ago, but because this Healing Center project came up, it pushed our pit house project to the back burner. So yeah, we have people from everywhere that come visit the camp.
All over the planet. It's pretty inspiring.
How many people actually live there full time?
Fluctuates.
Yeah, it fluctuates, it changes a lot. We never really give out the number for security reasons, but it's usually a good number of people out there full time.
And the reason we don't give it out because the police say they need 1 police for every 3 people, so so they know they would want that information to send forces in to remove us. So.
I think there's a question behind the post.
I was just wondering if farming plays an aspect at all with what you're doing up there, if it's mainly gathering, or if the geography is even possible for farming.
We actually, part of our spring camp, we have what we call the permaculture. We actually created a permaculture garden on the, even though we're up in the mountains. And we had a student that came in from Victoria that took a permaculture course, so she helped us select a site and we took her on tour of our territory, and we just selected a cut block that was logged. So, and they planted some trees there. We genetically modified trees, and we just hacked all those down, and then we dug trenches and went with the contours of the land. And we had 3 levels, and so right now we're growing conventional vegetables, but eventually we want to put our own root plants and berry bushes, and eventually that we wouldn't even have to water that garden anymore. It'll self-sustain itself, and the garden will not be just for us, but it will be for the wildlife too. Like we'll have berry plants and stuff for the bears, and once that's sustaining itself, then we're going to find another part of our territory and do another permaculture garden. And all of that was done by hand. I think we did 3 weeks of digging, where we dug these 2-foot deep trenches by 4 feet wide, and then we threw all the rotten wood in there, and then the soil we dug out we had to put back on top, and then we've got some topsoil and some manure, and then mix that in, and then just planted regular root vegetables. But we haven't had, because we're too busy fighting industry, we haven't had time to experiment and try and transplant our own root vegetables and other berries.
One of the beds is pretty much self-sustaining now. We have one main bed in the garden now that we haven't weeded. We didn't put a whole lot of new plants in. We put a lot of perennials in so that they'll always be there. We don't have to go back and manage it anymore. It's a pretty beautiful bed, the main central bed. The rest of them, we started a bit later, so we're going to start doing that. The garden's in transition now, becoming a natural part of the forest. Basically, it's a food forest that is there to provide food and nutrients for not only us, like Frida said, but for the animals as well.
We don't fence it, the deer go in there and lay in some of the beds. We don't have any fences up. So.
Yeah, bears kind of root around in there and look for stuff, but none of them actually go in and destroy it. They just kind of go and spend time in there and think it's a really pretty place and then continue on.
So we are now officially over time. Would you guys like to take any more questions?
One more?
I think there was just one over there.
Did I just hear you say that there were genetically engineered trees up on your territory? On the territory? Did I hear you say you got rid of genetically engineered trees?
Yeah, right now they have nurseries that plant these trees, and they only create trees that are going to be reharvested again. So even though they say they do reforestation up and after they log out an area, they're only putting back species that they're going to cut down in 25 years, so they don't allow any of the natural trees to grow back. For example, the moose depend on the willow tree. That's not one of the trees they would plant. They would only plant pine, balsam, and spruce. So there were those trees that were planted. We ended up just cutting all those down in order to make a garden.
And this was timber industry that planted the
Yeah.
genetically engineered trees. Have you noticed sorry to ask another question, but have you noticed a difference in like how these trees are impacting the rest of the forest?
Well, the forest is very dry and the soil was dead. That's what we noticed, that there was no more life in the soil. So that's what logging and replanting does, it destroys the soil.
It's usually a natural cereal stage with forests when they're disturbed. Like for example, a forest fire comes through, or somebody comes in and clear cuts an area and they leave it for a while. If they let it all come back, there's a natural cereal stage of different types of brushes and shrubs and trees that will come in, and they'll come in and they'll gradually take over the area and take their own turn in allowing the soil to come back to where it was before. That's discouraged within the forest industry because it limits the amount of time that they have between harvest and reharvest again. So their intent is not really about forestry, it's about trees. If they're actually interested in managing a forest, then they would take into account everything else. But they're only interested in harvesting trees. So.
We call it tree farming.
Yeah.
That's basically what they're doing.
Alright. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you to Frida and Togastai for coming all the way down here on your busy trip.
And a huge thank you to the crew that put this together. These guys are amazing.
Also, very quickly, thank you all again for coming. We have 2 upcoming things. On February 11th, we're going to have an event at the Buff, and there's flyers out front for that. Also, we're going to send another group up in May, if you let me across the bridge. But, and also, we want to send you back with $1,066. Good job. And we're looking forward to y'all helping us raise several more thousand to send back with us in May. So, thank y'all.
Thank you guys.
I just want to say thank you all for all you've contributed to the camp and for learning more and do more by sharing with others, because I'm pretty sure there's more people in this town than here. So share with others on what they need to do to make change for their future, their children. And to me, we have hope when we have young people doing what these young people are doing right now. And I say I'm very proud of you guys, that you're making change and you're educating yourself and you're doing your part to try and make things happen. And hats off to you young people.
One really cool thing some of the supporters have done over the years, they do something they call kitchen parties, where they invite people to come over to their house and they serve snacks or whatever it is. They'll pull out their laptop and they'll show one of the videos from the camp, and they'll educate some of their friends and family on what's happening. Then they'll challenge them to do the same in their kitchens. So it's a wonderful way to spread awareness on what's happening, because mainstream media is not interested in kind of encouraging that, their work with industry. So this is a grassroots initiative, and the grassroots initiative spreads by people doing that type of stuff. Just an idea.
Thank you.
And educate yourself, research. Learn about the fracking industry, learn about the pipeline industry, learn about any industry that's destroying your lands here. Do your own research and educate yourselves about the destructive industries that are right in your own backyard.
Yeah.
My uncle, he's my head chief, he's 72 years old, and he just started using the computer 2 years ago. And he knows more than me about a lot of the industry and government and what they're doing, so I always tell people that story that you can't say you're old. Jump on a computer and do research and learn about what's impacting right around your backyard.
Yeah, he's got binders and binders of research stuff that he sits there. His wife complains because she said since he's retired, he just sits in front of that computer all day. And he's got binders and binders of stuff, and it's good stuff. But like, I'm a researcher by trade, and I love going through his stuff because he just finds just some of the most amazing nuggets of information. And he's arming himself with it. So when he goes, sits down in the industry or government, and they try to lie to him about stuff, he'll pull out his binders and say, hold on, right here it says this. So it's just amazing, like he's 72.
And what about this spill that happened over in Ecuador? I read about that on here, and then he spoke to it and asked them about it. So,
yeah.
educate yourself, learn about what's happening in your own backyard, and what can you do to make change, and what can you make your leadership make change.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.